this train and bound for glory. This train and bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. Won't ride nothing but the righteous and the holy. This train is bound for glory. This train. Now this train don't care no gamblers. This train don't care no gamblers. This train don't.
Hey there, my name is David Maze, your host for this edition of Along the Model Railroad Line, program where we talk about the fun you have playing with trains. Of course, I'm having some fun playing trains. I hope you're having some fun too. Got to do a video here. We're going to talk about some scenery work I'm going to be doing here on my switching layout. I mean, you've been watching my videos. I'm sure you've seen a lot of scenes kind of over here. I've been filming trains going by this, little grade crossing. Well, it's time now to do some work on the rest of the scenery here. I've already, talked about this road here, some other stuff. But like I said, it's time to do what I call calling the dry riverbed. Look, saw some of the scenes earlier. I got this spot right here on the layout where I got a couple of bridges, a railroad trestle and a highway bridge right here, crossing over this little gap that I want to detail as a quote-unquote dry creek bed. In practice, I might put some water in it, but at the very least, I'm going to put some, scenery in there so it looks like, like a dry riverbed. It has water goes through it every now and then, and at the very minimum, make it look like you got this sort of sandy bottom, sandy, riverbed there with, grass and other stuff growing. But, at least you can see where water has been flowing through it. And like I said, do a little experiment. We'll come away, still have a little stream going through it. So, but like I said, that'll be the subject of this video. And one of the things I do enjoy doing in the hobby here is, like I said, doing scenery. Yeah, I enjoyed making the locomotives, building the kits, things like that. But the scenery, enjoy that too. And that's something that scenery, on your layout, some people apparently do feel intimidated by that. I mean, take something like this locomotive here. This is my little Heisler from a previous video. I mean, you kind of like, look at photos of a real one to figure out where everything goes. You can kind of get in here with measuring tape and do like that. Let's see. Okay, that's this certain length, matches how the prototype looked, things like that. Whereas, with scenery, it's kind of like, well, what shape is that rock supposed to be? Or how is that tree supposed to look like? What color is it supposed to be? Are those branches in the right place? Compared to, say, like, building our models like that, scenery may be a little more artistic. But in practice, it's also a lot more forgiving. I mean, again, building them, like a locomotive, be taking measurements, figure, okay, this valve is supposed to go at this location, this many inches from some other object. Whereas, the scenery, it's got, I think I'll put a bush right there. It'll probably look fine. I mean, as I sometimes say, with scenery, if you do make a mistake, just plant a tree on top of it. Nobody will notice. So, anyway, so like I said, I'm going to do some scenery work here, so I'm kind of get this section of the layout finished off. And invite you, tag along and watch. So, invite you, let's climb aboard, take another trip along the Model Railroad Line, and like I said, we're going to do some scenery work and create a river. Alrighty, let me take a minute here and show you what I'm working with. You may have seen some of this already in some of the earlier scenes, but I want to go ahead and get a little more detail about what's going on here. Again, this is part of a switching layout that I'm building. Got this section here. It's probably, been doing some scenery right now. It is kind of represents, or the track there represents the connection to the outside world. And the way the layout would be operated, I'd actually be staging trains on this track. I've talked about that in some other videos. But I got details, so it's crossing over this, riverbed or creek bed. And what you got here, got the track or crossing on a wooden trestle that's made from a kit, was produced years ago by a company called Crummy Products. They were located here in Houston. They've unfortunately been out of business for a while, but you can still find their kits at train shows and eBay, things like that. I think it's actually how I got where I found the trestle kit is on eBay. The trestle, like I said, is built from a kit. So most of the material you see comes from the kit. But I did, a little scratch building. The deck here the kit came with some ties that you use, you know, lay the track yourself. But I went ahead and cheated and used a section of bridge track from Microengineering. Got that in there, just, you know, save some time and some effort, and got it in there, painted. I think it was, you know, some you know, grimy black color. Got all this ballast over here with some retaining walls. Some of that came from extra material in the kit, whereas others I made myself, things like that. The highway bridge is a cast resin kit from a company called Sylvian Scale Models. They're out of Canada somewhere. I'll probably leave something in the description later so you can find it. They're actually well known for making a lot of resin cast, you know, auto, you know, cars and trucks and stuff. These these little vehicles are not one of theirs. This is actually something from Ather, and then the other one, I think that's from Viking, from Germany. Anyway, bridge itself in cast plastic or resin represents a 1920s era cast concrete, you know, highway bridge. A little research suggests this particular style bridge was actually pretty popular in the state of Michigan. But apparently, it was bridges like that were designed by somebody in the Michigan Highway Department, again back in the 1920s, and they built a bunch of them then. And apparently, there's still a few still in use now, probably, you know, on back roads, things like that. And, you know, here in Texas, I don't know how common this type bridge was, but I like the look. It fits kind of the era. The layout itself, in my imagination, is set in sort of the World War II, early 1940s era. There's a bridge, of course, here would have been built back, like I said, sometime in the 20s. Probably same time with the road. The railroad could be, you know, earlier, pre-World War I. But anyway, to get the river here, if you can see here, I actually, when I originally built the framework, this is made out of some 1x3 plywood, and there's a story there I've already talked about. But when I said I want to put, you know, basically I want to have excuse to be able to, you know, have the, you know, trestle on the highway bridge, I cut a piece out of this framing and then put another piece underneath it to make sure everything was still you know, solid. Which of course allowed me to kind of bring this down a little bit. So, you know, hey, it makes sense. You have to have these bridges here. The scene right here is mostly just, you know, beadboard, styrofoam. For what I'm doing here, it works just fine. It's actually a little piece of plywood right here underneath that this is all sitting on. And I've kind of slopped some paint on there already, but, you know, that's not finished. What I'm going to do here in a few minutes is I'm going to basically clean this out. It's kind of got a lot of dirt and dust in it right now. You know, just getting here with shop vac. And then I'll go and start the process how I'm going to do the scenery. And kind of looking ahead, the plan is I'm going to be basically using some plaster. It's actually some molding plaster type you use maybe for, you know, drywall, things like that. And just mix it up in kind of a consistency, I don't know, pancake batter, so it's easy to pour. Because I want to actually pour, you know, stuff, plaster in here on the riverbed. So it's around, you know, maybe 1/8 of an inch thick, something like that. Anyway, that'll be a little later in the video. Part of the scenery is on this side. You know, the scenery is supposed to, you know, just gradually sloping down. You got kind of, like I said, the railroad here on this side, the road here on this side, and it kind of got, maybe when the tractor put through, they had to put in a fill along this edge here, and the same thing with the highway. So you got this sort of, you know, kind of gully or ditch run through here, where in theory, you know, if it was raining, water could flow in there. Whereas over on the other side, either it has more of a bluff effect right here, where maybe water, you know, erosion caused this side to, like I said, kind of, you know, cut off like that, or maybe the original was more sloping on this side, and they came highway department or railroad who came through and kind of just filled that in. But if you can look right here, I got this kind of a retaining wall with this was basically a big drain pipe poking out of it. That I made, that scratch built. The retaining wall here is the basis of some cardboard that I painted with gray paint and then weathered it. And then the big pipe, drain pipe right there, is actually a little section of plastic tubing I had that's left over from some, you know, some project, stuff like that. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take some of this blue painter's tape. I'm going to put a piece of it right along here, kind of act like a dam, you know, to hold back the wet plaster when I pour it. And then I'll do the same thing over here. Now, in the case of not planning ahead, of course, the bench works up against the wall, so I have to pull the layout back a little bit so I can get back there. So I'll do that off camera. But I'll go ahead and put this piece here right now, just kind of show you what I'm talking about. You know, just take a piece off here. Piece big enough to go across. There we go. Just do like that. And just make sure it's tucked down. Like I said, the plan is to pour some kind of soupy plaster in here. The idea is kind of soupy, kind of, you know, like I said, pancake batter consistency, so that when I pour it in, it's able to kind of spread out and level itself out. But like I said, got this piece here, and then I'm going to kind of off camera do the same thing on the other side, so stay tuned, we'll be right back. Before we get started actually doing the scenery, I figured I'd take a minute and show you the things we're going to be using, the supplies, plus maybe some tools. Main thing I'm going to be using is this plaster right here. Yeah, gonna move that over. This is sheetrock or joint compound plaster, as it says here. It's actually made for use with drywall. You know, and the idea is when it dries, it's still kind of soft, so you can get in there with a sponge or a sandpaper and kind of rub, you know, smooth it out. And this, you know, this from United States Gypsum, bought the bag at Home Depot. I assume you can get it probably Lowe's and other places. I've used this plaster for some projects and seen it work real good. And you know, the issue might be is that when it is dry, it'll be kind of soft. You know, but I'm going to try and use that to my advantage because, you know, compared to say plaster of Paris, which will dry harder. This stuff, like I said, when it dries, will be still relatively soft. It'll make it easier to get in there, maybe some tools or some brushes, and kind of, you know, move things around, kind of redo the surface of the plaster, so I get the, you know, effect like, you know, like I said, it's supposed to be a dry riverbed, so the riverbed is relatively flat, but I can still go back in and carve some designs that look like where water has been flowing. So, like I said, I think that'll work for that purpose. And went ahead and delivered. Got the brand is supposed to take longest to dry, so I got plenty of time to work on. Other things will be you need, of course, obviously some water. You know, just, you know, tap water. Just got, you know, a jug right there. Got these cups here. Gonna use one of those to mix the plaster in. You know, and then just, you know, be able to just pour it out. Like I think I've said earlier, I want to make the plaster thin enough so it's easy to pour, but not so thin, you know, that it acts like water. Like I said, make kind of pancake batter consistently. Basically, a fork and a spoon. Okay, you know, scoop out the plaster, put it in the container with the water, and then use the fork to, you know, stir it up. We got a couple of, you know, paper cups. Got this spray bottle. You're gonna use that to actually spray the surface where the plaster will be going. The idea is kind of get it damp, and the plaster will set and stick better. And also, you know, keep it from drying too fast. Got some wood glue here. Maybe I'll use that as part of the process. Got some, look like gravel. It's actually, you know, bucket of cat litter, and basically stuff, you know, type of clay. Looks like gravel or rock. So I'm going to use that, incorporate that in some of the scenery. And again, be using some of the tools here for that. Already got some glue and water mixture here mixed up. Got these twigs back here. Came off of a boxwood bush, and I'm going to take some pieces of that, just break them off, kind of stick it down there on the bed, on the river, where I'm going to be pouring the plaster, so that as the plaster flows around, it'll kind of flow around the branches, so it looks like you got some old deadfall kind of got left there during the last, you know, heavy rains or whatever, and just like that, kind of just embed it in the plaster. Don't have it here, but I'm going to mix some acrylic paint in with the water when I mix up the plaster. Okay, I go and give the plaster a kind of a sandy colored tint to it. Again, I've experimented with that elsewhere. It seems to work, so I'll do it again here. Okay, so give me a minute. We move the camera. We'll segue back to the layout and actually get started. Alright, here we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to be showing how I'm going to be doing the scenery in this spot here, you know, so-called dry creek bed. You know, showed you earlier the bridges. Got the wood railroad trestle here and the highway bridge here. Got wooden retaining wall here on the tracks railroad side, and a concrete retaining wall here on the highway side. Of course, got retaining wall and drain pipe over here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and start scenicking this whole area right here. You know, we got the scenery up to around this point here. You know, we're kind of behind the camera. So now we got, you know, track ballast over here. Of course, got the, you know, the concrete pavement on the highway. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and start, like I said, doing some scene work along this stretch, and then we'll finish up with the creek bed itself. I showed you this earlier. Got some cat litter. What I like about this, it's kind of a grayish color compared to the more brownish greenish color of the scenery work I've got elsewhere. It's actually, like I said, it's actually sort of clay material. And the idea is I want to sprinkle some of this right in this area here. The assumption being that the highway department, county, whoever came back and dumped some gravel, some large chunks of rocks in here to act as for erosion prevention. Got to keep this area from eroding when water's flowing through. Because, again, most of the time this is probably kind of a relatively dry area. The creek bed itself is drier, maybe just a little bit of water through, and then you got kind of this drainage area right through here. And the thing about this cat litter, it's actually about the right size. Most of these pieces in HO scale out, like 1 or 2 feet, maybe 3 feet, some of them. So already kind of got that nice rock look to it, and the colors, same, like it's kind of this gray color. But I'm going to start, I got to pour some of this in this area and go ahead and glue it down. Then we'll kind of go and probably take care of this area next. Then we'll finish with the creek bed. A lot of times we do scenery work, you kind of do it in layers. I mean, rocks, sediment that is deposited in layers. So in a way, we're kind of copying nature. So the first thing I'm going to do, spray water in the spray ball. Basically, it's just regular tap water with just a tiny bit of dishwashing soap in it. Well, just a tiny bit of soap helps kind of break down the surface tension of the water. I'm just going to spray a little bit right in there, like that. Kind of get that surface a little damp, so when I go back and apply the glue water mixture layer, it won't just soak in too quickly and it may have problems getting the stuff to bind. And at this point, it's pretty simple. Just start pouring it in. Kind of like that. That's kind of what they would have probably done in real life. Just kind of just dump it in there. There you go. A little bit in there. A little bit down there. Pretty simple. I'm going to come back again with the water and just gently spray it on there. There you go. Just don't want to be spraying too hard or it'll actually knock stuff out of place. There you go. Pretty simple. And of course, obviously the cat litter is turning very dark right now, but as it dries, it should lighten up. Now once it's dry, it's going to be darker anyway. That's just, because of the glue and other stuff. As long as I'm not pouring water on there, the cat litter should keep its shape. Otherwise, if we put too much water on there, it'll probably just turn into this, big lump of clay. But for right now, let that soak in. Then come back with the recycled bottle of glue. Basically, just some so-called school glue. That seems to work fine. About roughly mix half and half with water, and then just start dribbling it on there. Again, having the water sprayed on here already will help the glue go and soak in. There you go. Pretty simple. Now, if I need to, I can come back and add some more glue later. There we go. At this point, just let that start drying. That's drying. What I can do is go ahead and go back here and add a little bit of scenery material to this area. Now, what I got here, got this plastic container. I remember collecting this years ago. So what you got here again is basically sand, like I said, with some little extra bits of gravel mixed in with it, so you get this nice texture. And the gravel itself's got slightly different colors. So I think that might be a nice effect. Grab this thing. What I'm going to do here, back up, and spray that area again, just a little bit. Get that a little bit wet, or just damp. Doesn't have to be super wet. Take this spoon, and set that there. And I'm using this old flower sifter because the mesh, there's a wire mesh here in the bottom, and it's just big enough that some of these bits of gravel can fall through and kind of add some texture to the ground cover. But if I need to, I could actually use, like some sort of tea strainer. That'd be even finer. I'll probably show you that later down the line. Okay, just get a plastic spoon here, dump it in. There you go, just pours right on. There you go, don't even need to do anything here. Pour more. There you go. And just do like that. Help kind of spread it out. Now here I want to actually kind of pour it on here around the cat litter, the rocks, erosion control rocks, so it kind of blends together here. There you go. Alright. There you go. Just move that out of the way. Use a little paintbrush, kind of help move stuff around. For the most part, it looks good. And just spread that out. I have to apply some more in these areas here. Where I can see where some is spilt here on the pavement. As long as I don't otherwise bother it, it will dry and it'll be easy to brush off. There you go. You can just brush a little bit here so we get some blending down here into the erosion control rocks. Okay. Let's come back with the water and just spray gently, very light. Don't want to be just dumping it on there, otherwise you end up with all kinds of problems with the ground cover getting moved around. Okay, that's enough. Let's take a little bit more of this, kind of, there you go, just gently spread that on there. There you go. There you go. Like that. There you go. Now what I want to do here is a spot here between the road and the retaining wall is basically nothing in there. So what I'm going to do is just gently spray some water in there. Spoon pull there. Just kind of just start gently pouring some of that in there. And kind of build it up. Kind of fill in that space. There we go. You can come back with the spray water, the sprayer here, gently spray some more water on there. Get everything wet, help it stay in place. And of course, I already painted this dark brown color, so it'll be fine. I'll go back and add more to it. Let's get our glue and water mixture again. All right. You just start gently dribbling it on. There you go. You just kind of dribble it on there. Get some up here, get little erosion effects as it kind of washes some of the dirt down. And kind of do that over here where it's get a chance to blend. There you go. Now, generally speaking, it's probably not possible to get too much on here, but kind of just pay attention so you don't have such a dripping somewhere. Just put a little bit back over here. There you go. What I'm about to do is come back and just add a little bit more, kind of put it up in layers, so we get a little bit of slope right there. I mean, you got the wall here, you got the street level here, and want to have that dirt kind of at an angle, sloping. Let's get the brush some of that off, like that. Okay, a little bit more. All right, a little bit more glue and water. There you go, just drip it on. Let that soak in. So the water sprayed on earlier, before this, will help the glue and water mixture flow in. Or you end up diluting the glue a little bit more, but in practice that should be fine. We can always add more if there's an issue with the stuff to stay put. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and stop here, let all this stuff dry, so that may take a while. So give this about a day, and we'll come back and probably add some more scenery, and of course move on, get the creek bed poured. Okay, here we're going to pick up where we left off. This has had a chance to dry out. Actually, to kind of speed up the process, I had a fan sitting over here for a couple hours, just on the low speed, just blowing air across here. Actually, it helped to dry out pretty fast. So I will proceed. The rocks right here, they got real dark, during the previous scene, but now they've had a chance to dry out, and while they're darker than what they originally were, they still came out light up. That to me, I kind of like the color it came out of, how it looks now. So what I'm going to do here, we're going to go ahead and finish this section of scenery here and kind of blend it in over here. Basically, what we're going to do, I'm going to get out, spray some water on here, Again, just doing it lightly. And do some more over here. There's still a few stones that are loose. And kind of off camera, I actually add a little more material here, so we're going to make sure that's all glued down. You just don't have to be soaking it. Doesn't have to be all soaked through, but still, you know, want it wet. There we go. Get that damp. Now what I'm going to do here, I got in this container some sifted dirt. It's a little different what I used earlier with this more of a sand type. So I'm just going to add a little bit of this to the layers. Take advantage of the strainer. Just pour a little bit of that in there. There you go. And then just kind of tap it. Just kind of help it to blend together. Here. Yeah, just do like that. There we go. Just put a little more right there. Here. You know, the strainer has actually strained out some of the finer stuff, so we got this kind of more coarse stuff in here, which actually I like. I just sprinkled it in a few places. So I want to build up the shoulder here on the road. Take a little spoon here. Again, just carefully add some more there. There we go. Here, kind of get where you can see it. Looks like I got to build up the shoulder of the highway. Looking good. Take a brush and just kind of knock some of that over. Back with the water. A gentle spray. Spray this on too hard, you'll end up moving the dirt around. You end up with little craters, other odd looking things. Make sure everything stays put. It'll help the glue to flow when we apply that later. Mixture of glue and water, roughly half and half. I mean, say 1 part water to 1 part glue, or 2 parts water, 1 part glue. And just gently apply that. There you go. Here. And do it like that. There you go. Let it flow down the slope. There you go. Okay, apply this now. Apply some more vegetation. Then let that set, and then if it needs to, I'll come back and add some more of the glue and water mixture. The thing I have to be careful with is, you know, with this pile of rocks right here, I apply the glue and water mixture up here, and it flows through, but then it flows down into the creek, you know, creek bed here. Doesn't really stick, so I have to add extra. But no harm adding some extra. Okay. Now let's see. Let's add a little bit along the side of the road. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take in some woodland scenics. This is what they're calling their burnt grass. This is, of course, more of a medium blend. I mean, the first stuff we put on earlier, fine blend, but this is a little coarser. Again, just sprinkle it around on there. Kind of at random. You can get the impression there's a lot of brush along here. I mean, this is, you know, some sort of drainage ditch, normally dry, but so you got a lot of vegetation growing in it. Okay, so stop there. Put that aside. What I'm going to do here now, I got what you're calling medium green. This is a little darker. Again, same, you know, coarse material. Again, just kind of sprinkle that on there. It's a little darker, so you start getting a little more, give more of a textured effect. There you go. And here. There you go. Right. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go some dark green. Again, coarse material. Just sprinkle it on there, maybe a little, spread it out a bit, so you kind of get some highlights. There you go. Pretty simple. Just, you know, add layers, kind of spread it out. And you got to put a little bit over here. Give you the impression there's some brush growing along the side of the road right here, between the road and the retaining wall. Put a little bit there. Take our brush and brush some of that back onto the scenery base. Again, hit this with some water. Again, do it lightly. Kind of spread it out. And you hit all this with some heavy drops. It's going to definitely move around. I mean, even the force of the water hitting it make it act like you're blowing wind, like blowing on it like that. There we go. Again, it's going kind of let it soak in. Set that aside. Now what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take some of this yellow grass and just lightly sprinkle that around. Don't want to have like that, kind of like highlights. Things like that. Little piece there's maybe a little too too big a clump. But just kind of just sprinkle some bits around, kind of little highlights, things like that. There you go. Don't want a lot, but just a little bit over here. There you go. Again, just hit that with some water. Make sure it stays put. Now once I start applying the glue and water mixture, a lot of those little yellow spots, they'll actually tone down. I already did the same thing over here, and if anything right now they're almost too bright. But yeah, once I apply the glue and water mixture, it'll tend to darken it a little bit. I got this little thing, basically some sawdust. Okay, just kind of sprinkle that around very lightly. Alright, then I got down here, you can see if I got a box here with some scenery stuff, and there's some loose stuff down the bottom of the box. Well, there's little bits of lichen, sticks, other things. Just again, same thing, just sprinkle around on here. Provide some texture, little bits of lichen. Here, just kind of stick that down there. Suggest some more bushes. Again, a little more. Again, this is just scraps literally in the bottom of the box here. Just kind of just put that there. Put that aside for right now. Big chunk of woodland scenics clumps. Just tear a little bit of that off. Just stick it down there. And I'm not sure you can see, but just some of the yellow pieces are already starting to kind of tone down, blend in. I'm going to stick that right there. Just got some brush kind of growing out through the ballast up here. Wet this down. A gentle rain. Give a little spring shower here to help everything settle in. Put that aside. And now, to get everything to stay put. Just come over here. There we go. Just start kind of pouring it on. Doing this, I'm reminded that when it comes right down to it, scenery work is really actually pretty easy to do. I think I've spoken early in the video about how some people look at doing scenery work and say, "Oh no, I can't do that. I'm not artistic." Really, again, it's really not that hard to do. As far as being artistic about it, well, yeah, don't take that much to here. Pick that up, just squirt some glue right there. There we go. I mean, compared to building a kit for a freight car, you don't have to be all that precise doing the scenery. Like, as long as it looks right, it's good. Do that. And looking good. Putting it where it's needed. Alright. And just a little more. Along the edge. There you go. Here. Get a little more something out of the scrap box. Just kind of stick that there. Chunk of lichen. Just put that right there. And here, a little bit of glue and water on top of it. There we go. It'll soak right in. Lichen, of course, is kind of a traditional scenery material. Before they came up with things like, ground up foam rubber, this was kind of the go-to material for doing scenery. Let's see, a little bit over here. Let's do like that. Glue water mixture right there. There you go. A little bit of scenery material over there. Everything's kind of bland here. And got this other stuff here. Let's try using some of this. This is, again, a little different color blend. Same thing. Just add some texture. we go. Add a little bit more of the glue and water over here so I get a chance to soak in. Alrighty. Okay. Just put a little bit right there. Of course, I can come back and add some more stuff later, but you get the idea. And you're kind of adding layers. We're going for effect. Alrighty. Alrighty. And here's add a little bit more over here. Got the excess glue, so just kind of sprinkle some of the stuff on top of it. Help it to blend. Let's go ahead and stop here, give this stuff a chance to dry, and then we'll move on to the next stage, which probably go ahead and start creating the creek bottom here on the dry creek bed. Alrighty. In the previous segment, previous scenes, I was applying the scenery material along here, applying the glue and water mixture, kind of get all settled in. And it's been a few days since I did that, and everything's had a chance to dry. And just kind of take a minute to show you what we got here. I personally like the way this is looking. Got the nice texture from the different bits and pieces of ground up foam rubber, different colors, different bits of sand and dirt that I used on here. The only thing I can see is maybe right here. There's a little bit of a line there from the old scenery to this newer scenery. So I don't know. In the long run, it's probably not a problem. But if I want, I can go back later and make some changes on that. Probably the main thing I'm impressed with is how this rock pile came out. In theory, this is a pile of rocks that was piled in there, provides some erosion control during heavy rains. And I personally like the way it came out. I mean, it took several applications of glue and water to get this thing to finally settle, stay put, because the water kept flowing downstream into the creek bed. But right now it's fully dry. Everything's staying put. I like the way the colors came out. I mean, original colors wasn't kind of a uniform gray, but as it's dried, the glue has made it darker. But in process, though, you do get these different colors, so you get a little nice, texture, different, like I say, colored effects. And I have seen some prototype examples of rock piles like this along actual railroads. Actually, you saw one a few days ago. There's definitely some difference in the shades, black and gray that you see here. So, like I said, I like the way that came out. Of course, did a little bit of scene work back there on the other side of the track. Eventually, I'm going to get some hardboard put up here, on the edge of the lab. Paint it, probably paint it, sky blue, and add some other details. And of course, put some more trees and bushes along here. And here, sitting on the trestle, of course, got my Heisler, which was the subject of a previous video. So I'm glad to go check that out. But like I said, overall, I'm happy the way this came out. And like I said, make a little minor change here, because again, kind of may blend colors a little better, but again, that's easy to do. Scenery can be forgiving in how you do it. Next thing, come back soon, I'll start detailing the stream bed. Clean it up, do some other little things, but I'm kind of looking forward to it, so stay tuned. Okay, let's go and get started here. Kind of show you how I'm going to mix up the plaster, get it ready to, create the bed of the dry stream bed here on the layout. Got some basic tools here. Going to be using this bowl to mix the plaster in. The bowl itself just made out of bottom half of a plastic milk carton. Just cut the top off, and got a nice big opening, kind of flexible. And honestly, when I'm done with it, just throw it away. Got these couple of cups here I'm going to use for measuring. This one here, which is actually a little dirtier, but it'll still work. I'll use that to measure out the water, and then this one here is a little cleaner. Use that to measure out the plaster. And I'm going to be working with a ratio, plaster water ratio, basically 2 to 1, two parts plaster to 1 part water, which seems to be typical. And of course, you can vary that a little bit. It doesn't have to be exact. That seems to be a good ratio. And again, for what I'm trying to do is I'm going to mix up the plaster with kind of like pancake batter, maybe a little thinner, something to be very easy to pour, but obviously not watery. And I'm going to take this paint here, some acrylic paint. Delta Cream Coat is the brand, and it's a flesh color. And I'm going to use that to color the plaster, kind of a fleshy, sandy color, like that. And the idea is again, kind of add this to the water, then add the plaster. Kind of like to give the plaster again that sandy color to it, and kind of make things a little less work. When any other changes I might need to do with the plaster later. So anyway. Let's get started. Again, I'm going to start with a cup of water. Again, don't know what size this is. It's just a convenient size. A rule of thumb is, especially if you're doing, mixing up plaster like this, the amount of water you use will probably equal about the amount of plaster that you need to use. And, the idea is, got the string bed over here. If I was to fill this up and then pour this water into the string bed, it'd probably end up with a layer of water, maybe about roughly an eighth of an inch thick, which is what I'm thinking will work for what I'm doing. Now, of course, if it mixed too much, we'll just pour it in. It's not that big a deal. Whereas if I make a little too not enough, well, let the plaster set up, then come back there and add some more. So, then just kind of carefully pour that in. There you go. Pretty simple. I'll just set that aside. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and take the paint, acrylic paint, and shake it up a little bit. There you go. Doesn't have to be a lot. That should do. Bring over the plaster. So I'm using a type of plaster sometimes used for doing drywall work. When it dries, it may not be completely hard, which actually I think will be a good feature for later work on, when detailing the string bed. And also, this particular brand is probably going to take a while to dry, so give it time to do some things, get it ready. Reach in there. There you go. There you go. Got about maybe a half container there. Get a spoon here. Add some more. There you go. Let's add a little more. Now, it's generally recommended that when you're mixing plaster like this, that you add the plaster to the water. And I think, as opposed to adding water to the plaster. And I think the basic idea of doing that is it cuts down any dust you might have blowing around. I mean, this stuff is dry and probably easily, if I was blue, I'd probably go flying everywhere. So, got this fork I'm going to use to help stir it up. There you go. Got this little paper, basically a lid off of a file box, using that as a tray to help catch any spillage. I just spilled some, so good thing. Just set that aside, and then take this little plastic fork and use that to stir it up. Like I say, right now I got a pretty watery mixture. Kind of definitely a mess right now, but when we're done, have something pretty to look at. So you got a kind of really runny mixture right now. So like I'm going to add some more. Now in theory, I want to add a whole nother cup. In practice, I'll start adding a little bit, stir it up and see how it looks. Because again, I want something that's not too firm. Like I said, maybe kind of like pancake batter, maybe a little thinner. But what I got here right now is a little thinner than I like. Another reason for using this particular plaster, it should take a while for it to set up. It's not like I got to be in any big hurry right now. Okay, I'm going to get some more plaster. There we go. Again, I'm just going to add a little bit of time. You're going to use a spoon this time. I haven't added the whole cup, but I got a lot in there. So let's just start, stir this up. Keep stirring. Make sure you get as much in there as you can. Kind of get rid of any lumps. All right. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of this plaster. There you go. Mix it in. Make sure it's all mixed together. Get rid of any lumps. Kind of like the colors come out, like I say, kind of a nice sandy color. You can see still a few lumps, but not enough to cause any problem. Okay. Now at this point, maybe it could be a little thinner, or a little thicker, but I think it'll work. So again, kind of 2 cups of plaster to 1 cup of water, or 1 unit, 2 units of plaster, 1 cup, 1 unit of water, whatever, 2 to 1. Go ahead and stop here a second. Give me a minute to move the camera, and then we'll proceed to create our dry creek bed. Like I said, we're going to now pour the plaster into the creek bed right here. I've done some things off camera. Got tape here and here to help act like a dam, so the plaster doesn't flow out. Can't see it here, but I actually got again one of these trays. Okay, directly under the layout. There's a set of shelves right under the layout, and I got this cardboard tray sitting on the top shelf to catch any leakage that might happen. I don't think this thing should leak, and I'm going to be prepared just in case. Also, I went back and glued some pieces of wood There's some twigs in here, a couple of pieces of what like scrap lumber. You know, even got some lichen and other stuff around the trestle bench here to suggest that when water flowed through, maybe during a flood, stuff got caught in here. So you know, a bit of detail, and as the plaster gets poured in there, of course they'll embed it, hold it in place. The moment of truth. Here you go. Our container of plaster, tinted a yellowy sandy color. And now what to do now is to pour it in and let it flow. There you go, just a little bit. There she goes. And just let that flow. There you go. Grab a spoon here to catch some of that. A little more, just a little bit at a time. There you go. Everything's flowing. There you go. A little bit at a time. There you go. All right. And again, just let it flow. That's the idea, kind of careful how thick you make it. Here, set this over here, out of the way. And use a fork here to kind of help move it along. I mean, right now it looks like there's plenty here. Again, just get the stuff to flow into the corners and crevices and other places. There you go. Reaching in here from the edge with this fork, moving the plaster around. This little wooden dowel here and use. Let's see. Just hold that over, like that. There we go. Just pour it in there. There you go. Want it to flow around various things that, like they got a little, so it looks like, all that stuff, flowed in there naturally. Okay. Get over here and get the plaster to flow into some little spots over here along the shoreline. Okay, basically at this point, plaster is poured in there. Now all I have to do is just sit back and, leave it alone and let it dry. See how it turns out. But so far, like I said, looking good. Don't know how long it's going to take to dry, but, it is a hobby, so I don't want to be in a big hurry about it. Okay, so, like I said, we've got to let this dry, and we'll be back soon and show you what we did, what we're going to do next. Alrighty, kind of moving on to the next stage of creating the creek bed here. Kind of move the camera around, give you a different perspective. What I'm going to be doing next is going to do some additional detailing here in the, the creek bed right here. As like I said, I'm using a type of plaster that is normally used for drywall work. And so the plaster itself, when it dries, is kind of soft. I mean, this is an experiment. I took some extra plaster that was left over from when I was pouring it here and poured it into a little mold made out of some aluminum foil to see how it works. And as far as how it looks fine. Problem is, it's still very brittle. If you want to use this for rock molds, it's probably not suitable. Or for anything that had to be load bearing. But for what I'm doing here, I think it'll actually works just fine because there is a solid base underneath here. And so we can get away with it and take advantage of the softness. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of, with a little bit of water, a couple of brushes, I'm going to kind of carve some channels into the creek bed, showing where water has been flowing. The first thing I'm going to do, got some water here with a little bit of soap, recycled mosquito repellent bottle. So what I'm going to do here, just going to spray some water in this area here, like that. And just get the surface a little damp, so it'll make it easier to move around. And of course, moisture will soak in. And at some point, I'll probably be adding a glue and water mixture onto this, which should help seal it, help kind of make it a little, a little more solid. Next thing, got a couple old brushes here. And I got an old toothbrush, and this kind of brush here, got the bristles are kind of stiff. And to help out, got some water right here to use to kind of rinse out the brushes. Try the toothbrush first, just dip in some water. And looking down here, I can imagine that, the stream, kind of flows from, say, this side of the concrete bridge and kind of loops around, splits off, goes between these two spaces here, whereas that space there is kind of blocked off. I may even put some more, twigs or something there, or, some bushy material to give that impression. Of course, I'm not sure you can see it here, but there's a big drain pipe right here. I'm going to kind of do a little detailing so it looks like water has flowed out of that. And the other thing, get the brush wet, just reach down here and just start kind of just scrubbing on the plaster. And what happens, because it's wet and soft, you start kind of digging into it, kind of doing like that, just kind of get there between, and just keep doing that to however deep I want it to be. Just enough to get the impression there's something, like I said, water's been flowing through here. Just kind of rinse that off. Let's try this other brush. I'm doing all the brushing in that direction because in my imagination that's where the water flows. That's going downstream. I'm not going to try and do a whole bunch here for this video. I'll kind of do some basic stuff so you can kind of see what's going on and come back and do some more later. Got a little, actually a piece of rail. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to use this as a scraper and just kind of reach down in here and just kind of do that. Kind of scrape a little trough through here. This plaster is not very thick, made about 1/8 of an inch thick at the most. And there we go. I'm going to do the same thing here. And just round that off a little bit right there. And go ahead and kind of do something here. Just kind of scrape that a little bit like that. Give the impression that erosion from water pouring out of the drain pipe. Put that aside now. All this stuff we scrape the side. I'm just going to kind of move it over to the edges. At some point I'll just spray some more water on here. Again, just kind of smooth that out. Give the impression made there's a place over here where it might be a puddle. Drop some of that back there, just push it down. There we go. Just kind of do a little something over here. Some more water on there. Again, the thing that I'm liking about using this type of plaster, being that it is soft, forms, so you get a more natural, nice effect. There we go. Let's see. Okay. Here. All right. Now, let's hit this some more to spray. Get everything to kind of blend together. Just keep spraying water on it, and the plaster will naturally settle into some natural shapes. Reach under. Pretty much just think about what imagine the water be flowing, especially when it's maybe gotten some rain, got a little water flowing through here, but it's not flooding. This plaster is only maybe at most 1/8 of an inch thick, so it doesn't take much to scrape through to the bedrock or there. I kind of imagine the various water flowing through. You get kind of go flowing through here like that. Like I said, it's kind of blocked right there, so it's mostly flowing these two spots. And then you got water coming out of the drain pipe. And then of course you end up maybe some dirt, sand and stuff building up right there. Water flows around it. Get the little toothbrush out again. Again, just push it through there, help kind of round off the edges. Pile of plaster right here. Just poke that with a brush, kind of round off the edges. And I got some little twigs stuck in here. I put those in there before I poured the plaster, so they would kind of be encased in it. Like I've seen that in creeks. Get a little tree limb got caught in a flood or something and flowed downstream, then gets stuck somewhere and sand builds up all around it. May not be able to see it, but actually under the bridge I've already got a spot underneath here where I kind of remove some plasters to create a little basin. And eventually, for the most part, this is going to be a dry creek bed, but I'm going to experiment probably off camera. Some of this stuff here, some gloss medium. Use that to create some puddles. A little shallow spot, a little puddle, place where a puddle might form. take advantage of the natural softness of this particular type of plaster. There we go. Try not to get my head in the way. There we go. So I got that done. Yeah, I'll probably come back and do some more here, but I want to at least do this, show you the idea what's going on. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put some a little bit of scenery material down there. Got some ground up foam rubber. Just kind of sprinkle a little bit right there, kind of into some places. And along the edge creek there. There you go. Again, suggest area grass and stuff is trying to grow in here. Take some more of this medium blend and just kind of drop it down in there, just like you're doing regular scenery. Put a little bit right there, and kind of move that over. There we go. And then grab a container of some correct paint. This is khaki color, and what I want to do here, what's supposed to be a kind of a sandy color, just take a little dab. Actually, take it out of the lid like that, and just kind of just dab that along here, along those places where water's been flowing. The idea is to give the impression that maybe there's a little bit of mud and silt built up in those places. And it looked like maybe a little place where it had a puddle or something, or the water stopped flowing enough to where it had sediment going down from it. Here, and kind of just reach in there. I can go back there and do some more. But right now, at least get something here, so I'll at least show you what we're trying to do here. Okay, put the brush in the little thing of water. Rinse that out. Okay, can get some more to spray. We're doing this just the same way you do any other scenery. And of course, that spray is on here while that paint's still damp. It'll help that kind of blend in. There we go. Okay. And I'll do some more work back here later. But like I said, just kind of show you the basic, give you an idea of what you can do. There you go. Some bits of coarser material on there. Other colors. This is some medium green. That was kind of a light burnt green. Just put a little bit there. Don't need a lot. There we go. And reach under here, some material. There it is. Take a little bit of this light stuff. Just gently, just sprinkle that around. Just a little, provide some highlights. Of course, once I start spraying a glue and water mixture on here, they'll tend to darken down anyway. There we go. Don't know if you can see it now, but earlier I put some pieces of lichen around the piers, the bridge supports right there. Suggest debris and stuff that's gotten caught there during floods and stuff. There you go. This bright stuff, just put just a little bit right there. There you go. And here, just a little bit over there. And of course, I can come back and do more stuff, but like I said, there we go. And just start flowing on the glue and water mixture. Don't be afraid. Don't be very generous with this. Don't be afraid to use too much. Like I said, this will help glue everything down, just like any other scenery. Plus, it'll help the plaster. So let that stuff soak in. Everything's. It won't make this plaster rock hard, but at least help it, stay put better. There we go. A little bit along the bridge. Alrighty. Like I said, I'll get back here later. May want to put a little more stuff over here again to suggest, water flow's been blocked. Right there. There we go. Set that aside. Seems like, pretty easy to do. If you, I mean, unless you do something really drastic, you really can't do it wrong. Right. I'll probably come back, add some more of this later, move some things around, add more stuff. So, should come out real good. So, okay. So that's sort of the basics here. Like I said, I'll probably be adding some more later on, but in the short term, we're done with the stream, with the creek bed, and now we'll move on to the next scene. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little trip along the Morrow Road line. Like I said, I got a chance to show you some more scenery work I'm doing on this layout, creating this creek bed. Kind of modeling as a dry creek bed, as I've probably been explaining earlier, and did some basic detailing here. I'm going to be doing some more detail work on it. Just going to do that off camera because it might get kind of elaborate and don't want to be boring you. But in my biased opinion, I like the way it came out. And like I said, I got some ideas to do some more little detailing work. I don't know, find some HO scale old tires and throw it down in there, something like that. Got some plans to do more videos about working on this layout. Want to kind of finish the fascia board right here. Want to get the creek bed done first, then come back with that and do some more scenery work all around here. And invite you all to tag along and watch. Our current plan is trying to get this thing, probably not finished, but at least a little more detailed and kind of a little more pretty. Because I have an opportunity to put it on display at a local mall train club sometime in November for National Morrow River Month. So give you something to aim for, and like I said, give you some more videos about how I'm doing this. So again, thank you for watching. Again, thank you for the positive feedback, the likes and subscribes and all that stuff. And of course, if you haven't subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Okay. And of course, likes, leave comments. What about your own experience? Maybe doing some scenery work or made some ideas, things like that. So anyway, like I said, I've got some plans for the layout and invite you to tag along and watch. And we'll meet up again soon. Again, take a trip along the Morrow Road line. And until then, you have some fun with your own trains. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
This train